You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. Almost 22,500 new cases of COVID-19 were recorded over the past day in Ukraine. 546 people died from complications of the disease. The Minister of Health of Ukraine urged to wear masks and maintain social distance, but they emphasized the most effective protection against COVID-19 is vaccination. Officials and doctors know that the situation throughout Ukraine is difficult. The intensive care units are full. There are queues from the ambulances near the hospitals.
This is a direct consequence of the low percentage of vaccination as well as of anti-vaccination propaganda, which undermines the confidence of our citizens in vaccines, although there are no valid grounds for this. As a result of this insane anti-vaccination information campaign, we have a terrible situation with the dynamics of numbers.
The second day, Ukraine demonstrates record rates of vaccination. More than 251,000 people have been vaccinated against COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. More than 1,000 mobile teams, 364 vaccination centers and 3,056 vaccination points work throughout the country. Already today, one can get vaccinated at 5 railway stations in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Lviv, Odessa and Dnipro. More than 6,700,000 Ukrainians have already completed the full course of immunization, and more than 8,300,000 received one dose.
The peak incidence was projected for mid-November, but judging by the numbers, I'm afraid that it will come even earlier. Based on the statistics of past waves, the decline will not begin until January at best. Now, in some regions of the red zone, the number of vaccinations per day has tripled. If this trend continues, it may happen so that there won't be any spring wave of coronavirus.
In the coming days, Kyiv may move to the red quarantine zone. This was stated by head of the capital, Vitaly Klitschko. The city's Emergency Situations Commission will decide on additional restrictions tomorrow. In addition, since October 23rd, quarantine measures will be tightened in the Khmelnytsky and Sumy regions. They will relate to the work of market, service and catering establishments. Visitors and employers will be required to have a coronavirus vaccination certificate or negative test. The Minister of Health calls for vaccination and emphasizes that there are enough drugs for COVID-19 in Ukraine.
Today in Ukraine, there are 10 million doses of vaccines against COVID-19 from different manufacturers. All of them are approved by the World Health Organization for emergency use. They are safe and effective. Everyone who received the first dose of COVID-19 vaccine in Ukraine will be guaranteed a second. Remember, vaccination will protect you from the serious course of the disease, hospitalization and death from COVID-19. Because last week, more than 95% of those hospitalized with COVID-19 in Ukraine were not vaccinated.
Just a test and no selfies. The Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine made changes to the procedure for tracking the self-isolation of people who came from abroad. In particular, in the algorithm of the Vdoma application, unvaccinated Ukrainians will need to set it for 72 hours. Besides, one no longer needs to regularly go through geolocation data control and take selfies to prove staying at home.
After registering in Vdoma application, a person must make a test within 72 hours. A negative test result will be added to the application. The test must be done in a laboratory verified by the Minister of Health of Ukraine. After that, the application can be deleted. If the result is positive, one needs to contact family therapist. If a person does not want to install the application, then Ukrainians will have to undergo a 14-day observation, while foreigners will be denied entry.
New rules for travel between regions took effect today. Due to strengthening of quarantine in Ukraine, for boarding a bus, train or plane, one will need a certificate or receiving one of 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, negative PCR test or a rapid antigen test. The documents will be checked by the conductor at the entrance to the train. In case of absence of a certificate or test, he has the right to reject the passenger. The restrictions do not apply to urban transport. For trips around the city, a COVID certificate or test is not needed. Participation of the United States in negotiations in the Minsk of Normandy formats to resolve the situation in the temporarily uncontrolled areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions has been actively discussed. This was stated by Oksana Markarova, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to the United States, in a comment to one of Ukrainian TV channels. Countering Russian aggression is not only an issue of protecting Ukraine, but also an answer to the question of whether international law, which the Russian Federation has neglected, works at all, Markarova said. We would very much like to involve the United States as an active participant in the negotiations in any format. We're actively discussing this because the issue of restoring territorial integrity and the issue of returning our territories is a key one. Therefore, we would like to welcome those countries that can help us speed up this process. Most of the Venice Commission recommendations, the Ukrainian law on the foundations of state policy in the transition period, can be taken into account when preparing in the relevant committee of the Verkhovna Rada. This was stated by Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Minister for Reintegration of the Temporarily Occupied Territories, Oleksiy Reznikov. He noted that he was pleased with the conclusions of the Venice Commission, in particular by the fact that in its decision, Commission mentions the Minsk agreements not as a source of law, but as conditions in which Ukraine is offered to act.
The Commission notes that holding of local elections is their last element. That is, after the government of Ukraine regains full control over the state border. The recommendations of the Venice Commission relate more to the further improvement of the text and the establishment of better guarantees for ensuring human rights. Almost all of them can be taken into account when developing a government bill in the relevant committee of the Verkhovna Rada.
Ukraine is waiting for a clear signal from the European Union about when and under what conditions the country will be able to become a member of the EU. This was stated by Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, during the 4th Forum of Associations. Colleagues from the associated trio from Georgia and Moldova joined his words. According to diplomats, the path to the European Union has made our countries stronger.
Главный вывод за годы.
The main conclusion over the years of the Republic of Moldova European integration process is that your arguments depend on the situation at home, on how people feel the progress in the reform process in their lives, how the courts really work independently and not in the interests of some clans, because we have a real fight against corruption, and how the living standards of the population rise.
We need the association trio as a driving force and as a clear message to the European Union that three nations in this part of the world are not neighbors. They are more than that. They are part of the pan-European family. Our three nations form a strong European force in our region. We proceed on our European path of development no matter which domestic challenges or external threats we face. The associated trio is here to stay. It's part of the new reality.
This winter, the whole country will be warm, assured Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal. Yuri Vitrenko, chairman of the Naftogaz Executive Board, also announced that the storage facilities have enough gas for the entire heating season. How Ukrainians are preparing to face the cold and when Ukraine will be able to end gas imports, my colleagues found out.
Fears that this winter the utilities bills will grow exponentially prompted many Ukrainians to prepare for the heating season in advance. One changed radiators and another saved money all summer to pay invoices.
Наперед, да, на комуналку.
I saved in advance for utilities as I'm a pensioner and pension is so small that one will not survive on it.
Поменяли батареи.
We changed radiators. Now we are waiting for the heating season start to check how warm it will be in the living room, where we've installed new radiators. We hope that the price will be normal, not some 50 or 40 hryvnias, but a reasonable price.
Квартира утеплена.
My apartment was insulated many years ago, so there are no problems. The main thing is that the radiators should be hot, as even our cat freezes. In Kyiv, heating in apartment houses can be given this Saturday already. And as Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal noted, other regions will not be left without heat either.
Школи, лікарні.
Schools, hospitals, kindergartens will receive gas at the price agreed in the memorandum. That is 13.6 hryvnias without VAT and delivery. According to Naftogaz company, Ukrainian underground storage facilities hold almost 19 billion cubic meters of natural gas. That is enough to overcome the heating season. We are ready for different scenarios. The winter of 2021-2022 will be the first one when there will be no gas prices regulation by government, Yuri Vitrenko, chairman of the Naftogaz Executive Board, said. At the same time, the price of blue fuel for the population will be no more than 8 hryvnias.
Як національна компанія «Нафтогаз»
National joint stock company Naftogaz meets the needs of the population in a market way. The price for the population in the wholesale market is now 7.4 hryvnias and retail price as Naftogaz sells is 7.96. That is a market way. National company as a reliable gas supplier meets the physical needs of the population in gas as well as provides an acceptable price level. Today there is enough gas in Ukraine to provide heat for the country. But if necessary, the government can purchase additional volumes of blue fuel from non-residents or use technical gas from underground storage facilities. Given the background of recent events related to Russia's gas blackmail, Naftogaz has set a goal to increase its own gas production from the current 14 billion to 24 billion cubic meters during 10 years. In order to extract more gas, one needs to invest, one needs to drill, one needs to explore. All this requires funds. And we presented investment opportunities at the Congress. We invited investors to come and invest in Ukraine. We pointed out that the so-called full-cycle cost from the point of drilling to the sale, the cost per cubic meter is from $100 to $160. We talk about this and we have convinced investors that at current gas prices it certainly makes sense to invest. Yuzivske gas field and deposits on the Black Sea shelf are considered among the potential places for gas extraction. If over the next 2 or 3 years we discover this potential and we realize that there really are reserves, that there is a good resource base, then production will start growing quite rapidly. In order to develop gas production, Ukrainian government intends to attract additional investment. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Yulia Granovska, UATV News.
$33,771 buttons on the canvas, such an installation appeared in Mariupol in memory of the victims of Holocaust who were shot in Kyiv in the fall of 1941. Buttons for the work of local artists were collected by the citizens. Some were sent from different regions of Ukraine. My colleagues will tell you more.
Each button on this canvas symbolizes the one who became a victim of the Holocaust. Nearby are the personal belongings of the victims: toys, tiny shoes, someone's glasses, smart dresses and formal suits, and suitcases.
This installation shows precisely the scantiness of a human's life at the moment and the relationship with that pressure, with that atmosphere. Here's like a small human body in a pile of heaviness.
To create this installation, artist Elena Filatova led through all the tragic stories of those who went to their deaths. The canvas consists of 33,771 buttons. They were collected all over Ukraine.
I got goosebumps from the tips of my hair to the tips of my fingers. I really liked it.
Before the opening of the installation, a performance about the tragic events of the Holocaust takes place. People go to a certain death, and they understand that they cannot do anything about it. There was also a girl who sang the song Chorna Voda, that is black water, symbolizing the flow of tears, the flow of death. It's very touching. Of course, I wanted as many people as possible to see this, and I'm sure that young people who put so much effort into it would like this. This Sunday, residents of Mariupol will honor the memory of victims of the mass shootings in mid-October 1941. Back then, about 9,000 people were buried in an anti-tank ditch near the village of Agrobaza in Donetsk region. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Nadia Sukhorukova, UATV News.
Another 26 cultural and architectural sites of Ukraine, which are communally owned, will be restored within the frameworks of the presidential program Big Restoration. The Minister of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine, Alexander Tkachenko, announced that funds for their repair were found in the budget. The minister also published a list of selected objects. The list includes monuments and sites from 1,000 regions. In particular, there is the Odessa Art Museum and the Tower of the Ostrog Castle. Projects were selected from applications sent to the ministry by regional state administrations.
The Budget Committee has confirmed the payment of subventions for utilities. This means that in the nearest future we will start financing those objects from the budget of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. Allocation of subventions for public utilities is a step forward. After all, Big Restoration is about objects all over Ukraine. Some of the cultural monuments are in the communal form of ownership, but this does not diminish their value and the need for repair and restoration work as well.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. Goodbye.